afternoon.
I know that's right. Come on, we need to do something to make sure everybody is awake and moving and invigorated. There she is. Come on up, Jill. Take a seat here. Thank you. All right, I'm Julialynne Walker, founder and principal for Brownsville Growers Market, and definitely a friend of Growing to Green and the Franklin Park Conservatory. And I'm very pleased that they were able to partner with us to host this activity today. So I hope that you're enjoying it and you get the word out, and we'll see what happens with the next time. But we thought it would be appropriate now for you to learn a bit more about some of the occupations you were discussing in the Jeopardy game, okay? So we've got some people here who represent different aspects, and I've got a couple of questions to get them going, and then we'll get into some more depth, and we'll have an opportunity for questions from you as well, all right? So first, if we could just go down, and if people could give their name, their organization, their role, and what has excited them about today? And just do that quickly, and we'll come back with some others.
My name is Jo Love. I'm actually a middle school agricultural teacher, and I sit as a delegate for Ohio Farmers Union.
And what excites you about today?
Oh, sorry. Having young people involved in growing.
My name is Jada Williams. I am the owner and farmer of Fresh Shoot 614, an urban farm and comprehensive farming experience where we not only grow and sell produce, but we also assist people in setting up gardens in their own spaces where they currently don't exist. I'm most excited about today is getting the opportunity to speak with you all, or speak in your direction, I guess, about growing. Growing up, I did not have the experience of people talking to me about other options other than being a doctor or a lawyer. So being able to provide you all with the opportunity to learn more about ag.
Good afternoon, I'm Trevor Horn. I'm from Mid-Ohio Food Collective. I am the farm director of Mid-Ohio Farms. I think what excites me the most about being here this afternoon is talking to the next generation of farmers about innovation and technology and how it can implement our food system in the future.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Hello everyone, my name is Nicole Jackson. I have an organization. I work for myself currently as a consultant and coach, but a lot of my work relates to my background in environmental education. What I'm most excited about for today was being able to talk to the tweens about citizen science and its role in connection with agriculture, farming, but also birding and conservation. And they got really excited about birds with me, so yay.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jared Grant. I'm an assistant professor at Ohio State. I'm in the agriculture and environmental department. And what excites me about today is more growing up, my mom had me come to events like this and just soaking things in and being able to pass that on. So.
Okay. Hold it, keep the mic, Jared. Okay. Dr. Grant, excuse me. Okay. What, if anything, did someone say or do to get you excited about this field?
I think the biggest thing was, like, when I was taking classes, somebody, like, they peeped that I was smart, and they always said I had options. Like, they said, like, you can do what you want, and open the door to things I never even thought about. Like, I never thought when I was in high school I'd be a professor. I didn't even know that was even a route I could go down. But having people guide me kind of, like, showed I had more options.
Same question?
Yes.
It looked like you were going to read another one. Okay. So I think for me, sharing my story, I think was a big part of that's something I shied away from just because I get asked a lot how I got started with birding, and a lot of people that I do know, it's a predominantly white field, but a lot of youth start, because they're grandparents or because, they went out on hikes with, family and friends. And for me, it started out of trauma, but also because I did the internship being able to share my story and passion, and then someone noticing through my story that I was passionate about the environment. And I feel like most educators that I've come across have noticed my introvertedness first as like a superpower, because I'm not okay with too much peopling. Like, I just need to recharge. It's not that I hate people, it's just I need to recharge. And then once teachers noticed that, they could see that if I had more time by myself to learn, then I could come back and be just as, you know, vibrant and curious with the rest of the group.
Wow, there's so much that I would say is exciting about the opportunities. I think as a former chef, one of my opportunities that were given to me to connect with farmers and producers. As I recruited for a pretty big company to find aspiring chefs, I would ask them questions about where they would procure their food. Certain items like shrimp, let's say as an example, or where would you get your potatoes from? And there was zero connection with those aspiring chefs and foodies to where their food came from. And so as I dove into it more and I started looking at distribution of how far food travels to get to our table, I recognized some challenges with what that looks like. Also, accessibility to food in certain places where people, densely populated areas, or places where people need food the most. So why we don't flip our food system to have more accessibility in those spaces is an opportunity that excites me to make an impact. And it also is motivation to see how we can kind of navigate through the food system to combat against some of those challenges. I kind of mentioned innovation and technology as well. What are we doing to be better environmental stewards? And how can we learn more about those things? So it's kind of that desire as opposed to passion, where you desire to want to learn more about something, and it keeps you kind of pushing and sharing out the things that you learn to make sure that you're contributing to the community.
I've told this story a couple times, but essentially my journey to growing started with a dream, like a literal, like, I'm asleep dream, where I was going to harvest food for my family in our backyard garden. I woke up and was like, well, I guess I'm growing food. And that started the rabbit hole that I've gone through in this general experience. And then I've come across organizations like We Grow in Yes, Julialynne, and so many other people, Sean, so many other people who, one, saw the passion that I had in this, and kind of pushed me and told me to keep going. And then also learning more about the disparities of people of color, specifically, in relationship to their access to food, in terms of how close they are to a food that provides produce. And that kickstarted another fire under me to work towards providing access and education behind fresh produce to the community that deserves it. Well, everyone deserves it, let me clarify, but for those who are underserved in that capacity.
Mine was a little simpler, maybe. When I got to college, realized I never really liked meat. I don't like eating it. As a kid, I threw away my meat and most of my vegetables. I watched the film Food Inc. that told me about the Farm Bill, how our food system is set up, and how food is processed. And it kind of changed my view on the food I was putting into my body. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go farm only, meats and vegetables. And I realized that's not easily accessible, especially like if you don't have a car. I was a college student, I didn't have a lot of money, but I knew I didn't want to eat what they had in the grocery aisle for most of it. So I just started growing. It took me, well, I traveled a lot and I grew everywhere I went. California introduced me to foraging, so found foods. Ecuador introduced me to understanding that food is everywhere if you look at it that way. Even what we call weeds are medicinal plants that can be used for us. So really understanding not only that part, like what you put into your body is very important, but also understanding that what you give back to this world is very important, because you can't expect to get really good, nutritious foods without putting your hand into it. And so understanding that and understanding I'm not the only one suffering from this. My family, of course, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, cancer, all of these things can be rectified by changing the first thing that you introduce to yourself, which is the food that you eat.
Okay, now, what, if any, academic experience helped to set you on this road?
My academic experience was all over the board. I love many things. I like doing many things. I went to college and changed my major 8 times. I don't have a degree in farming. I picked up farming just by trying my hand at it. I always thought I was a black thumb at it because I could never keep a plant alive. And then when I realized like I had some, I needed to keep this plant alive, it changed my mentality. I have recently graduated from the CSU Extension program for getting your certification to be a farmer and go after funding for farming. But really, my education is graphic design and communications. But I got really good at farming. I know how to keep plants alive now, understanding the system, the weather, and just recognizing those things, and just the knowledge that you already have inside of you. We are all, I believe, have already been here. No knowledge is new under the sun, and if we tap into those things of ourselves, we can figure out how to grow something.
Same. I have no technical academic growing experience. My grandfather grew tomatoes for my grandmother so she could have green tomatoes whenever she wanted, which is adorable. But he didn't really teach me. I just, watched him and experienced that transaction between the two of them. Again, it came from a dream. So all of my education came after. So I'm currently pursuing a degree in horticulture from Colorado State University, just to sharpen my knowledge in the growing field. That way I'm able to actually provide deeper education in that way. And there are different certifications that you can get that I'm also working towards, like a permaculture design, in terms of being able to design and structure gardens in that way. But none of my education came from growing in any way, shape, or form. On paper, I have a political science degree and a paralegal certificate. Really on track for law. Can't do it. So, yeah.
I think there's a couple experiences that I had from education. My mom was a teacher for 36 years, so school was non-negotiable in our house, for lack of a better term. I learned a lot playing sports growing up as a kid. That was my main focus. I was fortunate enough to play some college basketball up in the Detroit area, and I didn't get as much out of that free scholarship as I should have. I was not a great student. I was getting C's, get degrees, I was told, and sometimes that backfired on me, right? But I would say when I got into education, as I was studying in school, I didn't know what I wanted to teach. I liked science, I was interested in it. I was terrible at math, so we can cancel that one out. I liked to write, so English was nice, and history was always sort of very valuable to me, but I couldn't pinpoint what I wanted to be as I studied elementary education, or what I wanted to teach, I should say. Food became a vessel for me, I guess, as the economy hit some struggle points in Michigan. And so that was really where all of those 4 core subjects came into play for me. Ingredients were huge. So in restaurants, the closer you can close the gap to how far you were able to source a product, it was a better product 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times. So learning through how to get those best products and what makes them the best and why you should source from those spaces is really where some of my agricultural drive to want to know how to do those things came from. Also looking at different ways of growing was really kind of cool and innovative. I was at Disney for 8 years. I worked at a restaurant where we were able to harvest tilapia from aquaponics tanks. We were able to source lettuce greens for salads they were only 500 yards away from the restaurant. So that started to get me thinking about closing the gap. I think my best learning tool though was failure and hiccups and screwing up. I'm the type of person to either watch someone else make that mistake and make sure I don't do it, or make those mistakes on my own and then figure out how to kind of reapproach something in the long term. So failure is probably one of the biggest lessons that you can learn in life.
I keep forgetting everybody's talking about agriculture, and I've been talking about birds, so sorry about that.
Birds are agriculture.
Yes, and that's why, thank you for saying that, because that's a big part of my academic career, was learning how to best communicate the things that are happening in nature, which is why I was drawn towards environmental education. And a big thing for me is communication, so working with people from any age, is to be motivated, you first have to understand what you're learning about. So I think for me it was teaching myself, like I have this awesome relationship with nature and the outdoors. How can I share that with everybody else? Because I felt like I wasn't doing myself any favors by keeping it to myself. But with environmental education, because there's so many different topics that I can cover, I think it's what you were saying, Joe, just interested in everything. It's literally being like, I can't focus on one thing. And that's what was pushed on me a lot in college, of like, you need to focus on one topic or one subject. And like, my brain just doesn't work that way. So when I came across environmental education, and I was seeing all of these ways that educators, whether they were licensed teachers or non-formal educators, that they could tap into something that they were really excited about under the umbrella of environmental education, I got even more excited. So for me, birding is different than ornithology. Ornithology is the study of birds, which I do not have a degree in, but I understand it and its purpose, and then birding is an actual hobby of mine. So I just bring those things together as an educator to share with people that they can do, they can learn about birds in a way that is helpful, to help them learn about these bigger systems and how they work together and that everything is connected. Birds are indicator species. They tell us, what's going wrong in our environment, how we can better fix it through conservation efforts, but it's also a tool to re-engage with nature through mindfulness and meditation. So a lot of it is a combination of mental health, education, advocacy, which those are all things I'm interested in. So through my studies, I think I was more interested in learning how to better communicate things that people found difficult or struggled with. Like, I wasn't a great student because I didn't learn in the way that was engaging. I felt like I would have a better opportunity to do that as an environmental educator than to just regurgitate information. But how does it apply to what you're passionate about, who you are, how you can evolve, but also help your mental health and wellness. So when I think of agriculture, when I think of trees and like soil and things growing, like I connect that back to the human. Like, how are we growing? How are we rooting ourselves? How are we reaching out our branches to find community? Like things like that. It's easy for me to connect all of those things because it ties back to the person and how we can better ourselves.
When I was in high school, I knew I was like math and like statistics, and I didn't have a background like my family did, like my cousins, and they all told me when I was going off, if you major in like agribusiness or ag econ, just adding ag in front of it, it's gonna open up way more doors and you can do what you want. And when I went to, I graduated from Florida A&M University, and I wound up majoring in agribusiness, wound up getting a full ride, 3 internships, and it kind of paved the way for me to go on to get my master's in like future degrees and stuff like that. But what helped me in terms of like continuing on and going in my master's, getting PhD, things like that, was the research question And my advisor really thought, liked the research question I had. And my research question came from like where I grew up. So I grew up in an area that was like the derogatory is called food deserts, but they're making it be called low food accessible areas. Anyway, there was a grocery store. There was no grocery stores pretty much in my area. We have to travel like 10, 15 minutes. And my junior year of high school, they finally put a grocery store close to like where we were, like 5 minutes. But we still didn't go there. Like we still went to Walmart 10, 15 minutes away. And I asked my dad, like, why are we going there? And he said, it's not gonna last. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And sure enough, it lasted under a year. And even in the article that they highlighted, it said it was underperforming in a low density area. But my family was fortunate enough to have a car. Other families in my neighborhood may not have been. So that would have been like more needed. So that was something that always bothered me. So when I got a chance to think of a research question, that was the one. And from there, that's been what I do in my field.
Good. Okay, hold on to it. Don't pass it on now. You know I got another one, all right? Are you individually or as part of a team, this may be a good time now to also talk about your current professional obligations, employment, whatever, involved in anything innovative?
Okay. So as a professor, I divide my time, we call it splits, but I split it between research, teaching, and extension. So the research, that's me doing research on like I focus on like trust in community or community buy-in when it comes to farmers markets or grocery stores. People aren't gonna come, you can place something in the community, but if they don't come, it's not gonna last, pretty much. Teaching, I teach an emerging issues and agribusiness course, where right now it's been pretty much helping undergraduates understand credible sources on issues they care about. And regarding extension, this is my favorite part because this is me doing the application, me talking with people, extension and outreach, like events like this where I can actually use what I know and expertise and be able to pass it on and actually help either urban farmers, gardeners, or food retailers.
I would say birding. It's not all about birds, y'all. It's just nature in general, but I feel like that's where I'm the most active.
Innovative.
I would say innovative because birding, that's not something that's done by Black people. So that's something I'm just trying to do more of, especially growing up in inner city Cleveland. Like, I didn't know birding it's $1 billion business. Like, that's crazy how much money they make with ecotourism and like taking people, to different countries, not even in the States, but other countries that, are retired or have the funds or means to do so, and like take them bird watching for 2 weeks. Like, I wish I could have done that when I was in college, but I feel like that's something I've been more invested in.
I have to prompt her, I'm sorry, because she gonna waffle and I'm not gonna let me get away with this.
Okay.
How many Black women do you know serve as a consultant on birding?
One.
Now, would you please, that is innovative.
Yes, and I
So what is that? Oh.
Miss Julialynne. Okay. Yes, thank you for mentioning the consulting. The consulting is new for me. I've been more in the environmental educator space, and now I've transitioned more recently into the consulting space. But some of the consulting I've done has involved birding, and from a perspective of urban spaces, urban environments. And today I talked with the tweens, and we are focused on citizen science and community science, which are similar but different in the focus, and really talking about the importance of having them be a part of observations in their communities if they are thinking about being researchers or being scientists, that they can use information that they collect, whether it be water quality, air quality, the gardens that they have in their communities. They can collect information and have a better, with that information, have a better understanding of what they can contribute, and they don't have to go far away to make an impact. I realized this later, that I could have stayed in Cleveland and done a lot of different things, but I felt like growing up with a big family, you feel like you have to move away from home to have an impact. And a lot of the things that I was doing away from home, I could have done just as phenomenal in Cleveland, but also realizing that I needed to venture out to come back and see that, there's still things around homelessness, there's still issues with lead paint, there's still issues with, oh my goodness, what's the word I'm thinking of? The water? No, not water, but I'll say water, it wasn't water, but environmental justice issues that are still happening, that my family is still experiencing, and that I had such a privilege to be able to go to college, the first one in my family to go to college, but it was such a privilege because I was going away from what I was used to in order to grow. But then having to come back and realize, like, just because I went to college, their circumstances didn't change. So I felt like I needed to do more to educate myself, to be able to show them that they can get out of that poverty mindset too, through evolving their experiences. So for me, being a consultant shows that, showed me that I can really have this niche, role in my community and not have to go far away to have an impact, but also show other people, because I never want to be the expert per se, but I want people to learn from me so they can do for themselves, if that makes sense.
Good, thank you. Now, I'm gonna have to limit Trevor's time, because he really did speak for 2 hours on this question, but we're gonna do.
Yeah, no, I'll speed this up. I am a firm believer that the day you think you know everything, you don't know anything, right? And so, from an innovation standpoint, we can look at sustainability from 3 different pillars: environmental, economic, and social. And so we try to attack this with Mid-Ohio Farms, and since I've been in my role for about a year now, we're looking at taking this model that existed before I got there of making every acre count. And that just doesn't imply 2 yields, right? You in a city setting, growing in a city is technically innovative to any way you want to do it. Now, we're in a 3rd wave of agricultural revolution. So we domesticated originally, and then we looked at industrializing agriculture, and we've, over the last 50 to 70 years, we've identified a lot of environmental impacts because of that way of growing. Now we're looking at regenerative agriculture, and the funny thing is about regeneration, it's almost going backwards to go forwards. But there's a but to this. There are some professors that wouldn't agree with that because we're using soil science practices that existed for hundreds of years, and at the end of the day, if you can capture data, capture information, you can kind of give people the proof in the pudding, right? The yields will come. So if you're doing things the right way, and if you're teaching people how to do that, which I think is the most important part of innovation, the food will come. If you're looking at soil science, if you're looking to be better at taking care of your environment, if you're minimizing your natural resource usage to be able to maximize your fields, that's innovation. So whether it's controlled environment, ag in a greenhouse, whether it's growing in a vertical tower, whether it's even developing soil, utilizing soil science practices with testing macronutrients, micronutrients, looking at historical content of that soil, that's innovation. We need to be able to keep continuing to be better at the way we produce our food, and we need to bring people in of all backgrounds, cultures, to feel that they're included in those conversations. Birding is a part of agriculture, by the way. Because yeah, and if you grow symbiotically with nature, right? They're predatorial birds, and those birds help fight off other birds that eat the foods that we're growing, and those birds actually eat the insects that we're always battling back from eating our crops. So there's this wheel of innovation that exists. And sometimes maybe we dive into it too much. Maybe it doesn't have to be as complicated as it needs to be, but if we're always doing the same thing, we'll always get the same end result. And that's the definition of insanity, right? So we have to look at things from a different lens.
So I think there's 2 parts to my answer. One, I am a Black woman farmer, and the difference between a gardener and a farmer: a gardener feeds himself and his neighbors, and farmers feed the world, the nation, or whatever the quote is. But We feed a lot. So I think that that is one, a part of the innovation that I have. I am a Black farmer in Columbus, a Black urban farmer in Columbus, Ohio. And even saying, hey, I'm a farmer, everyone's like, you're a what? Explain, like, what does that mean? I don't get it. I don't know how you're a farmer, what does that mean? And then the second part that I would say is a part of the innovation is that I'm utilizing my learnings to assist other people in creating gardens in their spaces. Again, I'm not the first person to ever do it, but I am someone who is actively doing it, and people are very receptive. So I'm gonna call that innovation. And yeah, just being, again, a Black farmer, a Black urban farmer in a space where there's so much room to change people's minds about what it looks like. You don't look at me and see overalls and steel-toe boots. I consider myself a farmer with a nightlife. Like, I'm outside, enjoying life as well as, you know, feeding the world. So that's the innovation that I have.
So don't sleep on overalls and steel toe boots.
I do love the overall.
They're very handy. In my role, this is actually the first time they introduced a agricultural teacher into an urban environment in Dayton, Ohio, and a lot of Ohio actually. I was one of the first to introduce a new curriculum. I'm the builder of this curriculum. And right now, me and the other teachers in the ag environment, that we now have 5, are working to activate a nature learning campus in collaboration with a nature wildlife reserve owned by a Black woman in Dayton, Ohio. We're also working with community centers around Dayton, Ohio to activate those spaces to be places where those kids can not only learn but potentially earn. As a farmer's assistant, I'm also a part of a what is called 200 Yards initiative that my friend created in an effort to turn people's backyards, community garden, or community neighborhood associations, churches, into having a farm on their land as well. And I'm also on the board of a cooperative that my friend created out of Nebraska that is not only being funded by Pepsi to purchase food from local farmers in that area in order to make sure that they have a market. But the biggest one is growing little minds into growers. That is especially those who look like me. That's not a previous initiative. Every conversation that I have is typically around the rural growing. It's not about urban growing. It doesn't talk about specialty crops. It talks about commodity, and basically specialty crops are the crops that humans eat. So they're not that special, except for the fact that they're overlooked in our current food system. So making sure that they understand that McDonald's does not have to be the option, that their fries are awful and grown with so much pesticide that people need to wear hazmat suits in order to be on the field with them. Making sure that they understand that what you put into your body affects your little brains, and that's why you can't sit still, and that's why you're so upset. So talking to them not just about where your food is coming from, but where it ends up and why you need to pay attention as well. Yeah, I think that's
Okay, good. All right. I'm going to stop. I got a dozen more questions because everything they've said, I'm like, oh. But I think it would be a good time now to hear from you. What questions or comments would you like to make, having now heard this panel?
We don't bite, guys.
I think some of you have already said, but
Well, just speak up a bit so everybody can hear.
yeah. I think some of you have already said. I think some of you have already said, but was this your dream job or the job you thought you were going to end up with, or was there something else that you thought you were going to end up, or something that you wish you ended up with?
That's a great question. Great question.
So when I was younger, my dream job was a ballerina. I broke my ankle and that dream went out the window. I also thought it would be like a ballerina / track star, but again, I was told I would never run again. I do run, but I was told at a very young age that I would never run again, and I put that in my mind for a second. I finally released it back because it wasn't for me, but so that was what I thought I was gonna do. I don't have a dream job. I don't dream of work. I dream of life. And so I don't consider this a job because I enjoy the outcome so much. And so it's not about going in and putting in my time, it's going in and seeing what can I manifest in that moment. This will not be always what I do, but this is what I'm doing now. And honestly, I would be in a cabin somewhere, very remote, and wouldn't see me on the if I really wanted to do what I wanted to do. But I want to make an impact before I would disappear. So that's where I am.
I don't dream of labor either, but I've chosen a labor's passion. I didn't know that this was my dream job, my dream field until I got into it. Again, my background, I was going to be an attorney or something great, something very corporate, and that's not who I am. And just like you said, this is my passion now. I am a multi-hyphenate. I can do anything. Tomorrow I might be building a house in Ecuador. Like, that is very on brand. So I didn't know that this was my dream job, my dream space until I got here. And it's funny because it is an actual dream space. Again, I didn't know I was going to be here until I got here, and can't wait to see what the next dream is, honestly, but I'm kind of writing this one out.
If you would have told me 5 years ago I was going to be working at Mid-Health Collective as a farm director, considering my background, I would have probably told you that you were crazy. When I left kitchens and took the first job I could in Reynoldsburg at the high school, creating a farm-to-school program with the Ohio Department of Education, I would have told you 5 years prior to that, you're crazy. Even a couple of years before actually going to culinary school, you would have told me you were going to be a chef and go to Walt Disney World and work and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, right. You know, at the end of the day, my dream was to play professional basketball, and I was very close to getting to that point until I got hurt as well, and that is life, right? And you roll with the punches, and in a good way, right? Sometimes those punches, like I mentioned earlier, punches are just like I mentioned earlier, those failures that you encounter. It's how you react to those failures that really define who you are as an individual. Making wonderful, beautiful dishes and feeding people, I actually became a person I didn't want to be as a leader. I was aggressive, like you would assume Gordon Ramsay might be in a kitchen. I worked for chefs that make him look like a saint. And that's saying something really of how that particular industry works. So when I started in a role where I would go home at nighttime and I was obsessed with learning more about whether it was agriculture or environmental science, and then I was teaching that to my students, I could put my head down on my pillow at night and said I was doing something that was selfless. It's not for me. The collective and the role that I'm in right now, I don't feel and view as a stepping stone to a next opportunity. I'm just like was mentioned, I am living right now, and I'm doing the best I absolutely can to help other people be as good, if not better, than where I am in my current role. So when you can start thinking about what you're doing to help other people, your world changes entirely.
Can you repeat?
Dream job. Is it your dream job or?
Dream job. I would say dream jobs with an S. But I think for me, because I'm just interested in a bunch of different things, I think growing up I had a bunch of different jobs that I wanted to have. There wasn't one in particular, but I do vividly remember, I think I was probably 11 or 12, I wanted to be a veterinarian, just because I wanted to care for animals. And then I realized when I was in college, I remember someone saying, either you become you have a life or you become a veterinarian. And I was like, I want to have a life. So once I realized that I didn't want to put that much pressure on myself, because I was the first one in my family to go to college, first one in my family to move away from home. That was enough stress for me. And then being a Black woman going into these environmental fields is like, it was a lot. So I think for me, I wanted to really focus on my health and well-being first, which is why I'm doing more of the consulting and coaching now, because it is, it speaks to me as a person, and it's lifelong work that I want to do, and it's lifelong living. Like, that's the other thing, is I want to get to the living and not just thinking about working to, you know, pay for stuff and to like provide for myself. That should be a given. I don't know why that's just a given, but the work that I do as a consultant is working with communities and nonprofits to help them see the value of working with diverse communities, and that they already have the skill set. We don't need to tell them what to do. They already know what needs to be done. They just need the resources and the money. And then also the coaching is working with Black women to help them realize their worth through existing, through, you know, meaningful nature experiences. So for me, it is lifelong living that I'm more involved into, and then just, yeah, living by example, and hopefully other Black women see that and want to do for themselves.
Yeah, this wasn't on the bingo card. But a mentor showed me like a better bingo card, you know, options, and I was like, okay, this makes sense. And now being like 2 years in my role, I can completely see why, like, because I have a lot of questions, want to focus on research and areas in my community, because there's a lot of questions that a lot of people in research don't focus on that I kind of live, and I want to make sure that that gets talked about and discussed in policy and stuff. And you get to dabble in different things, like meet amazing people like this and work on projects like consulting or teaching, making sure the next generation can bring out even more ideas that you can't even think of. So, yeah, I like this.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. We really don't have time for more questions. This is the end of our slot. And but I do want to say thank you very much to the panelists. And I hope that you have been inspired. I think inspiration helps to motivate us in a lot of different ways. Two, I hope you understand that, I know for me coming through, I look at the list of majors that you were using this morning for the Jeopardy game. When I came through college, 75–80% of that did not exist. It didn't exist. There are whole areas of knowledge that have been created and developed in my lifetime. I've changed careers, as such as it were, 4 times. And when I came back to Columbus in 2012 to retire, I had no idea I would be 11, 12 years after play this kind of role in urban agriculture, all right? But to do it, not only was it inspiration, but it's also extremely important that we be literate. We have to be able to think, conceptualize, and express ourselves in ways that other people understand us. Jared made a joke about not wanting to do math, but it is important to be numerate. We have to be able to count. I mean, to be an A, you gotta keep track. I mean, when it says you gotta put a seed every half inch and the rows so far apart and you're, you know, that's math. You have to be numerate. And finally, nobody's going to tell you to get out of bed. You have to have a strong, independent work ethic that allows you to do what needs to be done consistently. She said that there's going to be a vet, but there are no holidays for farmers.
No.
You have to be able to get out there and do something with the land every single day, or with your animals or whenever you're working. But also, there are a number of different careers, opportunities, where you will never get your hands dirty, but you can be in agriculture. So be open, talk to people, enjoy, experiment, and then see where it leads you, all right? One final note, I know that your time is not necessarily your own. We hope you stay to the end of the day. But if you should need to leave before we conclude, we do have a thank you for coming gift at the registration table. Okay? So can we give a big hand to the panelists?